Hi, friends. How are you? Listen, we all remember our teen years, don't you? Ugh, I know. You couldn't wait to grow up. That's all that mattered. You just wanted to get out of your parents' house. You want to do whatever you wanted. Whatever. This isn't a phase. This is my life. You don't understand. It's so dramatic, isn't it? But that's your teenage years. You're just trying to figure out who you are. And looking back, I think a lot of us can agree that it was, well, I don't know. Some people might say it was the best of times. Some would say it was the worst of times. But listen, today I put together a murder mystery and makeup compilation where we are going to revisit some angsty teenagers who went off the what? Yes. But in today's cases, these teenagers didn't just stomp their feet and slam their door and just give attitude. They took things way too far. Oh my, they ruined everything. Today we are talking about stories of teens who kill. So let's get into it.
Warning, today's story contains graphic descriptions of crime scenes, adult dialogue, and strong language. Viewer discretion is advised.
These stories will never, ever make sense to me. Ever.
Interesting.
Suspish.
Suspish.
You make good choices. You make good choices. You make good choices. I will now get into the story, okay? Our first story involves vampires, okay? And it's a throwback, let me tell you. I remember this episode so much because we laughed. We giggled. It's about a vampire, okay? There was this kid, 17-year-old Rod Farrell. He was a vampire, allegedly, who led a group of friends on a chaotic road trip in the late 90s. And yeah, vampire, okay? Don't believe me? Well, let's take a look. Disclaimer, I'm just letting you know today's story involves lots of blood, some self-harm references. There is one line about a dog, sexual abuse. I mean, it's really all of the above. All of the above. So just a little disclaimer, maybe skip this one, So what do you think about when you hear the word vampire? Sharp fangs, maybe a black cape. Turns into a bat. Maybe you think of sparkles. But the way we think about vampires as a culture has definitely changed a lot over the years. But in general, vampires are just very popular. They've been popular throughout the years. Great. But for some people out there in the world, there is a fascination with vampires that goes beyond just liking vampire books and movies. There are some people out there who even identify as vampires and practice occult rituals that mirror vampire behavior. You may have guessed it, Martha. Today's story is actually about vampires. Well, it's actually about one guy in particular who thought he was a vampire and then he went on a killing spree. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with this guy named Roderick Farrell. Now, Roderick, but we're going to call him Rod for short, he was born March 28th, 1980. And his mom, her name was Sandra, she was only 17 years old when him and his dad met and fell in love. He was a teenager too. I believe he was 17. His name was Rick, but it doesn't matter because he's not a lasting character in the story. So his parents, they were children, young children, trying to raise the baby themselves. And 9 days after Rod was born, Sandra and Rick, they decided let's get married. Because, this is an assumption because it's not really clear if they married for love or if they felt like they needed to because, family tradition. I don't know. Either way, they decided to get married. It's sad because it didn't work out and they got divorced just a few weeks later. Yeah, it lasted a couple of weeks. So after they filed for divorce, Rick would join the military and he would basically abandon Rod and his mom. So thanks, bye. So with Rick out of the picture, Sandra's now 17 years old and she's a single mom, at 17. She doesn't really have anywhere to go. She doesn't have any source of income. So she decides, you know what? I'm going to move back in with my parents and help them hopefully they can help me raise my child, you know? Sandra and Rod, they move in with Sandra's parents or Rod's grandparents to a town called Murray, Kentucky. They have a population around 17,000 at this time, so it's not really that large, but it's kind of a large city for Kentucky. So Murray has 3 city parks covering 200 acres and is home to Murray State University and also the National Boy Scout Museum. It also has one of the oldest theaters in the state of Kentucky. Now, I wish I could tell you today's story was all rainbow and sunshines, but as we know here, this is not the Rainbow and Sunshine show. It's not. Unfortunately, it's just all bad news. So they move in with Sandra's parents. Now, Sandra, again, she's only 17. I think she may have turned 18 at this point because as soon as she got 18, she got a job working as an exotic dancer and also a sex worker. So she would be gone working a lot of the time, trying to make money, and she would leave Rod alone with his grandparents. But it turns out that it just really wasn't the safest environment for Rod. You see, when Rod was 5 years old, there were reports that his grandfather, Harold, and his friends raped him while they were on a fishing trip. But it turns out that Rod wasn't his grandpa's first victim either. This man, this grandpa, had a history of sexually abusing people. He sexually abused Sandra, his mom, and also he had another daughter who he sexually abused as well. And I'm sure he probably had more, but who fucking knows? So Sandra actually finds out what happened to her son. You know, good for her, because she decided, you know what, I'm not just gonna sit back and say nothing. She decides to confront her father. Good for her, you know, because that's, yeah, you get it. Good for her. So she goes to her father, and it's not clear, like, exactly what was said, but she does confront him. Now, Rod, he would later say that, like, the whole confrontation in itself was actually just as traumatizing as the actual abuse had been. Again, it wasn't really said in great detail, like what happened, what was said, and what came from it, really. So despite that super toxic environment that came from living with Sandra's parents, Rod and Sandra would end up bouncing between living with them, living in different public housing situations, just moving around to different states. You know, nothing was really stable, and she just picked up and left pretty often. And then at one point, Sandra, she gets remarried and moves to Michigan with her new husband. And her new husband doesn't want Rod. He doesn't want Rod. So he's telling Sandra, like, let's just leave him behind with your grandparents. Now, I guess before leaving, this new husband tells Rod, we're never coming back. That's what he tells him. He tells the little boy this, right? So this little boy is like, oh, great, you're never coming back, and you're leaving me, because they're going to leave him with his grandparents, the ones that are abusing him. So I'm sure, I don't know. Just, it's not great. It's not great. Sandra eventually finds out that her new husband had said this to Rod, and she gets super pissed off, and she decides to divorce him, and then she moves her ass back to live with her grandparents again. There's a lot going on. Little recap, Rod's been sexually abused, abandoned by his father, uprooted a bunch of different times for brief moments, abandoned by his own mother. And his mom has her own baggage. She's also been sexually abused, became a single mom at a really young age. So with that being said, Sandra gets to a point where she needs an escape. She needs something that could just make her feel better, something that could take away all of the pain and just keep her occupied, right? And at some point in the 80s, she found her escape in the form of a tabletop role-playing game called Vampire the Masquerade. I know that's probably not where you thought this was going, huh? I know, me neither. I was like, oh, okay. I would have put my money on drugs or alcohol, but good for her. Good for her. Board games. So if you haven't heard of this game, because I sure didn't, it's basically like Dungeons and Dragons, but with vampires instead of dragons, or dungeons. So Dungeons and Dragons first came out in 1974, and at this point in our story, we're in like the early 90s. So tabletop role-playing games was like still new, not super popular. It was just kind of like not a mainstream thing. Vampire the Masquerade was created in 1991, and it was inspired by vampire films like The Lost Boys and other games like Dungeons and Dragons. The creator of this game felt like hunting vampires was kind of boring and cliche, so he wanted to create a game where you were the vampire, and it quickly became a big hit. I'm the vampire? Okay. So there would later be video games, novels, and even a TV show in 1996 made by Aaron Spelling, who, if you don't know, made a lot of popular shows like Seventh Heaven, Charmed, Melrose Place, 90210. Yeah, horror games were hard to sell, but this game, Vampire, it wasn't just a horror game. In this game, the characters had a list of supernatural powers called disciplines. These were powers like strength, speed, toughness, as well as like mystic senses, mind control, and blood magic. This game gave characters more superhuman vibes than like the horror story ones. It just sounded a lot more fun. Players would use a 10-sided dice to wield these superpowers. Each skill determined the number of dice a player could use, and the values the player rolled determined success or failures in their quests. I know, it honestly just sounds super confusing. I'm sure if you're playing it, like it's not, because apparently it was said that it was a really easy game for new users or new players to quickly understand and pick up, which is probably why it became so popular. So when Sandra discovered the game, she became obsessed with it. And because the game was like really easy, it was easy for her to also teach her son Rod how to play as well, which she did. So she and Rod are playing this game, and both of them are just playing it nonstop. They love it. It's fun. They're vampires. Yay. Rod also started reading Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicle books, which kind of just fueled this flame of vampireness even more. And he was so obsessed, Rod, that he was now claiming to be a 500-year-old vampire named Visago, which is the character he created for the game. This may sound familiar because we have talked about vampires before, remember? I'm trying to think. I know we have. I did a vampire story not long ago with Sean Sellers, and then I did another one where it was a 500-year-old werewolf or 300-year-old werewolf. Anyways, this is different because Rod is a 500-year-old vampire. Because I know some of you are going to be like, didn't you do this story? And I'm going to say, no, I did not, because I did not. But it may sound like other ones we've done. Okay, moving on. So, Visago. So to look the part, Rod decided to... his fashion changed as he's getting older and he's a teenager, and he takes on the role of this vampire. Rod is dressed in all black. He's wearing trench coats now. He grew his hair out really long and started wearing it in a ponytail, as vampires do, I think. But that's not all. Rod also turned his bedroom into like a shrine to the occult. Oh, super creepy. In an interview, Rod said that everything he was listening to was dark, that it was based on hate, war, and death. His bedroom was filled with upside down crosses, dark books like the Satanic Bible, and just a bunch of weird stuff. There's one like, what's it called when you have sex with dead bodies? That stuff. What's it called? I'm drawing such a blank right now. I'm so sorry, but that kind of stuff. Rod also had hooks and metal cables hanging around his room, so it looked like something out of the movie Hellraiser. For some reason, he said that he had a pile of broken glass laying in the corner of his room at all times. I don't really know what that was about, though. The broken glass. Maybe one of you knows. Like, what is that? Is that a reference to something? Let me know down below. Thank you. So in his bedroom, there were actually photographs of Rod hanging upside down in his room because, you know, vampires. Huh? But to top the vampire vibes off, Rob would go for walks in the cemetery late at night. Well, you may be thinking to yourself, okay, that all makes sense. Well, does it? I don't know. Maybe you aren't thinking that at all. But in order to be a vampire, Bailey, one must drink blood, don't they? Yes. A little bit of blood drinking does need to be involved. So there was this guy that Rod met in school, and his name was Steven. Now, Steven was also super into vampires. Yeah. He was like, oh my God, yeah, me too. I don't know. They were both super into vampires, right? Both into the occult. And both kids came from broken homes and were not the most financially stable. Because of this, it's believed they had something to bond over. Steven said that they bonded because Rod had the same views and same principles in life. Something about like they both agreed, kill or be killed. Like very dramatic, as teenagers are, you know? So to this kid, Steven, Rod was like a reflection of himself, right? And he said that the feeling would send chills through his entire body because he finally found his spiritual person. I mean, it's good to find friends and all, but you know, these guys took friendship to a whole different level, I guess you could say that. So about a year and a half into their friendship, Steven finally decided, I'm going to bless you and turn you, Rod, into a vampire. You could say things were moving pretty quickly, but how does one turn someone into a vampire, you might be wondering? Well, according to Steven, Rob met him at a tombstone, and they called this tombstone the birthplace. And they did a ritual. So during this ritual, you would bust out like a regular razor blade and cut the upper arm. And after they cut themselves, Steven would make Rod drink his blood, either until he had enough or until the blood stopped bleeding. And then he would do the same, like a little much. Like, I'm not that desperate to be your friend, but now Steven referred to himself as a quote unquote responsible vampire because to him, like, he tried to teach Rod that blood should only be taken for survival. And he would go on to say, quote, giving blood as a gift is one of the most precious gifts you can give someone. It is a total commitment. There is no turning back once this is done, end quote. But Rod kind of like disregarded that lesson. You'll soon find that out. But it turned out that Rod's mother, remember Sandra, she didn't really have a problem with this whole vampire thing. You know, she's like, oh yeah, he's dressing up, being all kind of different and stuff. But you know, he's fine. Like one day she had found Rod in his bedroom with some friends and they were cutting their arms with a razor blade. I guess there was like blood everywhere. And Sandra like walked in and was like, oh, boys will be boys. Am I right? You know, don't forget to clean up. So yeah, I mean, it turns out the reason that Sandra was so relaxed about it was because she too was super wrapped up in this vampire lifestyle. She referred to herself as Sta, Mistress of the Dark, after an Elvira movie character. And she would dress up. The whole house was like vampire themed. And she would take things to just a super inappropriate level. Hold on, let me just do my eyeliner because this is already creasing. In September of 1996, Steven, remember Rod's friend, he had attacked Rod pretty badly to the point where he did need to go to the hospital, but he refused treatment because they were brothers. Anyways, but he refused treatment. And Steven ended up being convicted for the attack, but I couldn't find any articles explaining why Steven attacked Rod. There's a theory though. So the theory, shortly after his incident, Rod's mom was charged with soliciting a minor, Steven's 14-year-old brother. Apparently, allegedly, Rod's mom, Sandra, she was writing him love letters, his 14-year-old, and was begging him to help her cross over and make her his vampire bride. Yeah, there was just like a lot going on with this unit. So my guess is that Steven found out about his younger brother and Rod's mom and like kind of took matters into his own hands. That's the theory, okay? But after this, it's safe to say that their friendship was officially over. So around this same time, Rod, he started skipping school, right? He's skipping class, he's ripping heaters, smoking on school grounds, and just being a very bad boy, okay? I'm about to say something. I was about to say, do you blame him? He does not have like the best role models around him. Shit, man. Anyways, he's just not being a great kid. And he came across this other kid at school who were kind of like him. There's the bad kids, right? And they kind of all got together. It was like a sense of community. All the misfits like him kind of gathered together, and Rod became this leader, teaching them about his vampire lifestyle. Hey, like, look at me, like, I'm a vampire. Don't you want to be like me? We have the same background. Being a vampire, super cool. You get to do vampire stuff. Like, it's cool, you guys. Be a vampire with me. And he welcomes these misfits into his vampire clan. One of the kids he welcomed into his vampire clan was a kid named Howard Anderson. Now, he was only 16 at the time. I just need to get this eyeliner on because I just messed up my eyeliner. I'm so upset. It's fine. I look great. Anyways, one of the kids he met at school was Howard Anderson, who was 16 at the time. Now, this kid, Howard, he also came from a really poor family, and his father was said to be an alcoholic. His dad had abused his mom, and he would like witness it and stuff. It was just not a good home. So this kid is telling Rod all of this, and he's like, we need to be best friends because I can relate to this. I know what it's like coming from this kind of household, just finding a common interest. Howard would later say that like he really looked up to Rod because he was like this cool kid and the one that everybody, all the misfit kids looked up to as this leader. And he considered himself Rod's right-hand man. And all the other kids just loved Rod because, again, they all came from like a dysfunctional family and they all just had something to bond over. And Howard said that like in all of their minds, it was them against the world. Like they were just loyal to each other. So there were other members of Rod's group, and their names were Charity and Dana. And Charity was Rod's girlfriend at the time. Friends and family described her as a really shy girl who just kind of kept to herself. She didn't really like say much. And Dana, she was the oldest of the group. Her family straight up said she was strange, okay, and that she craved attention, but she had more of a follower personality and was easily manipulated. At least they're honest. They were aware. She was weird. There were some sources that claimed Dana was actually the leader of the clan, but honestly, Rob gets more of the credit for being the leader because of the events that go down, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So someone's the goddamn leader here. So this group referred to themselves as the Vampire Clan, and they hung out at different spots. They hung out at a place called the Vampire Hotel, which was basically just like a rundown building in the middle of the woods near Kentucky Lake. It was here that the clan threw a bunch of parties. They did drugs, and they would participate in various types of rituals. Oh yes, rituals. And it was rumored that by the time Rod was 14, he was already smoking the devil's lettuce, weed, and he was also using LSD. And it wasn't long before he graduated to harsher drugs like cocaine and heroin. With these harsher drugs, it was said that there were some not so nice side effects that would happen with Rod. And Rod would often fly into uncontrollable fits of rage. He was once possessed by a demon, and he also was experiencing insane mood swings, just going from being deep and thoughtful one minute to being enraged and breaking furniture the next. During one of his fits in October of 1996, Rod allegedly took things to just a whole new level. Okay, Rod and other members of his clan, they allegedly broke into a local animal shelter and they killed some animals. I'm really sorry. But that's what they did, like shitheads. Rod was later charged and arrested for burglary, trespassing, did you? Trespassing, I'm so sorry, and cruelty to animals. So he was charged for it, thank God. He should have been burned at the stake. No one messes with animals. They're so innocent. You just don't do that. I don't know why Rod was just charged. They all should have been charged. Whatever. Honestly, he should have gone in jail because maybe it would have prevented what was coming next. Because of course, now he's going to up his game. Well, of course. I don't know if of course is the right word, but anywho. So by the time Rod was in 9th grade, he actually was expelled from high school. But remember, he was moving around a bunch. So Rod at one point was living in Eustis, Florida in 1995. He met a 15-year-old girl when he was living there. Her name was Heather, and people said that Heather was super nice. She was normal. until she met Rod. And then she became super quiet, started wearing all black. She dyed her hair purple. Gasp. So her family's like, we don't recognize her anymore. She is becoming the devil. Ugh. But Rod was having an influence on her, and he took her on into his little vampire clan lifestyle. But it's not totally clear if Rod was expelled from the school in Florida and then moved back to Murray, Kentucky, or if he moved first and then was expelled. It's kind of irrelevant, but that I'm just being honest. I don't know what came first. So he met that girl, Florida, Heather. Great. But now he's back in Kentucky with his grandparents and stuff. So he's remaining friends with the girl, Heather, in Florida, and they're talking on the phone all the time. Now, Rod would get in trouble because he would run up like a $850 phone bill for talking with her nonstop. Back then, long distance phone calls were very expensive, okay? So he was talking with her all the time. He racked up a pretty big bill, to say the least, okay? And it was strange because Rod had a girlfriend at this time. Yeah, he had a girlfriend at this time, Charity, I think I said her name was. And he was talking with Heather nonstop. But it is what it is. So in the spring of 1996, Rod and Heather are on one of their super long phone calls. And I guess at some point, Heather tells Rod, like, my parents are abusing me. Like, I wish you can come and rescue me. Now, we don't really know if this is true or not. I like to think that she's not lying, but this is what she tells Rod. And I guess this was like music to Rod's ears. Okay, it seemed to awaken something deep inside of him. Maybe it was because Rod was triggered by the thought of Heather being abused, which reminded him of his own abuse. Or maybe it was something else. But for whatever reason, Rod was now on a mission to save his damsel in distress, Heather. Okay. At this point, he was already planning a trip to New Orleans because apparently there was this video arcade out there that he really wanted to go to. So he was like going to take his vampire clan out there and they were going to go to this video arcade game. Great. So he tells his clan, hey, we're going to make a pit stop in Florida to rescue Heather first. If you look at a map, maybe you're like me and you're like, I don't think you can make a pit stop in Florida when you're going to New Orleans from Kentucky. But okay. Kids, you know, they're just wild imaginations. Get off. I hate when that happens. Why do you do that? Okay. So sometime during the middle of the night on November 23rd, 16-year-old Rod, his 16-year-old girlfriend, Charity, 16-year-old Howard, and 19-year-old Dana would all get into an old like Buick Skyhawk and they hit the road. So they were driving a 750-mile drive from Murray, Kentucky to Eustis, Florida. 750-mile drive. Road trip. Again, making a pit stop in South Florida before going to Louisiana somehow makes sense to them. But, okay. Sure. Okay. Anyhow, so the gang ends up going to Florida and they meet Heather. And in the early morning of Monday, November 26, 1996, they head to the local cemetery where Rod officially, quote unquote, makes Heather a vampire in the official blood drinking ceremony. Now with this, Heather finally crosses over and she is now a vampire. She is one of them. And now they're on their way to go to New Orleans to this video game place. Because that's what vampires do. They play video games to celebrate. So they head on the road. They're heading out to New Orleans. Now, the drive it does not go smoothly. Of course it does not. Because when does a long drive ever go smoothly? Never. Great. So they head off from Heather's, and the first thing that happens, like not even far away, was that they got a flat tire. Now, they get stopped by a police officer, like asking the kids where they're going, They smelled something funny from the vehicle, and it freaks the kids out, but there's like nothing really comes from it. On top of that, when they were doing the vampire ceremony, Rod took LSD, so he's kind of like tripping balls. So the whole thing is just making him a little funky fresh. And he's driving, which is even better. Note my sarcasm. So yeah, the LSD is probably not working with him. It's probably working against him. So the cop ends up like questioning them. They're not really, well, they just ate some blood. But like, there's nothing really to get them for. Anyways, so cop leaves and the kids decide that they need a different car. I don't know. They were like, we need a different car because I guess, according to Rod, being stopped by the police means like they're on the police's radar. So they need to get into a different vehicle ASAP because the police are onto them. Rod is just extremely paranoid. So everyone's like, yeah, we need a different car, you know? Oh my God, yeah. So they decide like, hey, we're not far from Heather's house. And Heather was like, my parents have another car. It's a Ford Explorer. We could just steal it, you know? We could just steal my parents' car. And they're like, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's go get that car. So the plan was for Heather to go back into her house, leave the door unlocked to like the garage, and then head down the street and meet up with the group. And then Rod's girlfriend, Charity, and the other girl, Dana, were going to take Heather to her boyfriend's house to say goodbye, while Rod and Howard were going to break in and steal the Explorer. It sounds confusing, but essentially, Rod and Howard, they're going to break in and steal the Explorer. Great. And then they're all going to meet back together and leave for New Orleans. Seems simple, right? Yeah, okay. But remember, Rod is on LSD, so it's not that simple. He's like, oh, rock. So the girls head out. Rod and Howard, they head to Heather's parents' house to steal the car. So they find the open door to the garage, but they can't find the car keys. Oh, shit. Originally, the guys had brought some clubs with them to use as weapons to scare Heather's parents into giving them the keys, just in case they needed to, but it wasn't like in the plan. But once they were inside the garage, Rod ends up finding a crowbar and decides like that's a way better weapon than this like little club I brought. So he ditches that and he grabs the crowbar and like goes into the house. So the first thing Rod and Howard do when they get into the house is they rip the phone off of the wall so no one can call for help. Because remember, well, it's 1996, like landlines, that was it. So they ripped that off of the wall. And then they begin to look around the house for the keys to the Ford Explorer. Now that's when they come across Heather's dad was sleeping on the couch, like in the living room. And this wasn't according to the plan, but Rod is like, you know what? I'm gonna kick his ass. So Rod starts beating the father to death with the crowbar. He beats him to a pulp, fracturing his skull, his ribs, everything until he dies. He dies. Not in the plan and not a great move there, Rod. Meanwhile, Heather's mom, I guess at this moment, was taking a shower. So she's in the shower. She gets out of the shower. And she goes to the kitchen and she pours herself a cup of coffee. And then she turns and she comes across Rod. Rod is standing there covered in blood, crowbar in hand. She's like, oh, fuck. I think it takes her a minute to kind of realize like what's going on. And then it finally registers in her brain like, oh, shit, tits, this guy is here to hurt me. Like, this guy doesn't want to be my friend. You know, she finally reacts and she ends up throwing the cup of coffee at him, hot cup of coffee at him. And this makes Rod angry. He's so angry, he just sees red and he beats Naomi to death with the crowbar. Yes. So both parents are now dead. And let me tell you, that wasn't even the plan. The plan was just to steal the cars. Murders them. Dead. Goodbye. So Rod has now just killed Heather's parents, and Howard, I guess he was just standing by watching because he wasn't participating in the killing of the parents, but he does find the keys to the Ford Explorer, which was in the father's pocket. And so they're like, hey, while we're here, let's just steal some credit cards and some jewelry, and that can like help us fund our trip. So they do that. So they rob them too. Before they take the car and go, Rod and Howard do one last thing. They decide to like burn the body, do some kind of sacred burnage onto the body, and then do like a satanic ritual and like some kind of dance movements around them. The dead parents. I know. Jesus. Then they finally take the car and then they drive off, meeting with the girls. So the group take both cars to the nearby town of Sanford. Now the plan is to swap the license plates of the two cars, the old car and now the Ford Explorer, and then go from there, right? So they end up going on their way. They go through Tallahassee and they're heading towards New Orleans. Meanwhile, back at Heather's house that same day, Heather's 17-year-old sister, she comes home, which sad, didn't even know she had a sister. Like, that's fucked up because now this poor sister's ruined for freaking life because she comes home and she finds her parents dead. And not even just dead, they were like brutally murdered. In addition to the skull and rib being fractured, the autopsy report showed that Richard, the father, he had burn marks in the shape of a V on his chest, which was later said to be Rob's symbol. It's just what he left behind, on like a burn mark he would leave on somebody for vampire cults. It was his mark. You get it. Stupid kids and their stupid hobbies. I need a pencil sharpener. So when police come out to the scene of the crime, they found a letter from Heather that was left behind saying that she was running away and that she loved them both. So cops believe that Heather like must have something to do with the murder, but at this point, she's nowhere to be found. So the gang is on the road, and after 4 days, they stop in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The day that they stop is Thanksgiving Day, and the group is running low on cash. So Charity decides it's a good idea to call her grandmother, who lives in South Dakota, and like asks her for money. However, Grandma suspects that something is not right. You know? She thinks something's up, but she tells Charity, like, sure, honey, I'll wire you some money. Go stay at the Howard Johnson Hotel and I'll have the wire transfer sent there. And Charity's like, great, thanks, Grandma. You know, like, we'll go there now. So when Grandma hangs up, she calls police. Yep. She calls police and she's like, hey, this is where the group is heading. I just feel like something's not right. And yeah. So I'm assuming here, I'm not really 100% sure, but I guess like they must have not had the best relationship, Charity and her grandma, because why else would her grandma call the cops unless she knew something's not right? You get it, I think. Yeah. Okay, great. So the whole gang, they arrive at the hotel that Grandma was sending the money to, but cops were already there, like waiting for them. And the 5 of them end up getting arrested and were held at jail for a week before being sent back to Florida, where they were eventually placed in a juvenile facility. They had blood on them. They were all sorts of strange. They just found all sorts of suspicious evidence. And interestingly enough, no one denied anything. Rod was recorded making 2 different confessions. In one confession to police, Rod said, quote, I went to her dad and smacked the fuck out of him until he finally quit breathing. So yes, I'm admitting to murder. Actually, it took him about 20 fucking minutes to stop. I swear I thought he was immortal or something. End quote. Okay? Which is ironic coming from someone who thinks he's a vampire. Maybe he thought he was a vampire. I don't know. And then the cops asked Rod, like, do you have any remorse, for what you did? Like, do you want to apologize, And Rod said, yeah, no, why? Killing is a way of life. So, okay, so Rod just, all right, Rod, great, At least he confessed. I'll give him that. He also told them that the killings were done in a rush. Howard, on the other hand, admitted to the cops that the murders were premeditated, despite Heather asking them to, like, not kill her parents, just steal the car. Howard told them that he was going to go for the father and Rod was going to go for the mother, but then he saw Rod just attack them both and he couldn't. Who freaking knows? So this ends up going to trial. Now, the case was a big, huge deal at the time. Rod was doing all kinds of interviews, okay? And he was claiming that he was being framed by a rival group of vampires. Oh yes, a vampire gang was out to get him. He also made multiple statements that he had multiple different personalities and he was trying to ditch being a vampire. I don't know. And whenever the media tried to photograph him, Rod, he would just like stick out his tongue or say something like, "God bless America." I don't know. All this publicity, though, it made it really hard to find a jury for the case. But eventually they did. They selected some jury members. And then in February of 1998, Rod, who was now 17, he pleaded guilty to 2 murders, armed burglary. Why do I say it so weird? Burglary. He pleaded guilty to that and 2 murders and armed robbery. He also claimed that the others traveling with him were completely innocent except for Howard, who was an accessory, confirming Howard's confession, really. So now the jury was tasked with deciding if they recommended Rod get life in prison or the electric chair. Now, Rod's attorneys tried to argue that he was insane, okay, and that Rod's age and state of mind should be considered when making the decision. 3 experts claim that Rod was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance when he committed the murders. And they also argued that Rod's ability to really understand the crimes that he committed were clouded by his upbringing, his extreme drug use, and the fact that he was a vampire. It clouded his mind, y'all. Clouded his mind. Psychologists were also brought in to stand on the trial, and they brought up the fact that Rod was, sexually abused by his grandfather and his grandfather's freaking friends. And then Rod's aunt had testified during the trial that indeed the grandparents had sexually abused her and her sister, Sandra, the mom, remember? Yeah. So psychologists came in and determined that Rod was suffering from a laundry list of mental disorders. And this was just furthering the lawyer's argument that Rod was just not of sound mind and therefore should not be harshly punished. I don't know, man. But on February 23rd, 1998, the jury voted to give him the death sentence. Oh, yes. And then 4 days later, the judge sentenced him to the electric chair. Now, it's actually an interesting point because in an interview, Rod said that he had always fantasized about his death ever since he was a super young kid. He said, quote, "Going to the electric chair is, as morbid as it may sound, it's been a fantasy of mine. I used to think about that a long time ago when I was 9 years old." End quote. Dream big, they say. Dream big. For 2 years, Rob would hold the record for being the youngest inmate on death row. Congratulations, Rod, you did it, buddy. Wow. But then in 2000, Florida Supreme Court, they ended up reducing his sentence to life in prison. And he was like, God damn it. He was bummed. Whatever. So the rest of the gang, though, they didn't escape unscathed. Howard was convicted of the same charges as Rod, and as I mentioned before, he had confessed to his involvement in the murders, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Heather was being charged with murder, but then I guess because she testified against Rob and Howard, she's good to go. She's free to just be free, which is fine because it sounded like she really didn't want her parents to die. That was a Rod and Howard thing. Charity was convicted of 2 counts of 3rd-degree murder, robbery with a gun, and burglary armed with a weapon. She was sentenced to 10.5 years in state prison, and she ended up serving 8 years and then was released in 2006. Dana, she was convicted of the same charges as well, but she was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. She ended up serving 13 years and she was released in 2011. Rod's mom, Sandra, strongly believed that her son didn't deserve the death penalty. I mean, of course, right? But she believed that Heather should be charged with murder as well. She would go on to say, like, there's one person walking around who's just as guilty as he is, and he got the super harsh treatment and this person didn't. She's just like really upset that Heather got to walk away scot-free pretty much. Yeah, so she's really pissed about that. So during Rod's trial, Sandra took the stand, but her testimony was just all over the freaking place and it did not look good, Sandra. It was not helping anybody. She claimed that her involvement in vampirism was over-exaggerated. But then later, she turned to reports during a break and said, like, I'm a vampire and we live forever. I will never die. So she was very flip-floppy on whether or not she's a vampire. She also said she was upset by the way that the media was portraying her and also how the psychologists during the trial were portraying her. Okay? She was like, I am not a vampire. I'm just trying to help my son. Sandra would later claim that she changed and she is no longer mentally ill. She is cured. So good for her, I guess. I don't know. After the murders and after the trial, Sandra would go on to auction off everything that belonged to Rod, including art projects that he made as a kid, photos, stuff from his room, his ashtray, and she was just kind of milking it. Because you know those people who are like obsessed with murder and stuff? And, well, not me. I wouldn't buy it. Anyways, you know those people out there who like want to buy all the... She was auctioning it off to them. You get it. So she was making some money, you know? It's just so stupid. Is that against the law? Excuse me. Okay, sorry. After the story of Rod's crime hit the newsstands, other details began to surface about the blood-drinking teen cult that her son was a part of. And the neighborhood Sandra, was living in, they all signed a petition behind her back asking her to leave, that she needed to move away because it was a bad look for their community. So Sandra, she ended up packing up her stuff and pretty much just making a new life for herself. She started a jewelry business and she moved back in with her mom to take care of her. Her father was diagnosed with dementia and would stay in a home, be taken care of. Sandra moved in hopes to just get a fresh start and put her past behind her. No word if she's still a vampire or not. I don't know. Over the years, there's been a lot of back and forth. Rod and Howard have been trying to appeal. Both of them had appealed for a new sentence hearing back in 2013, but both attempts were dismissed. And then a few years later, a new rule came out saying that a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole for a juvenile is considered cruel and unusual punishment. So with that being said, at the age of 39, Rod and Howard were able to challenge their life sentences again and hopefully get out. So Howard ended up being resentenced to 40 years in prison by the judge, and he was allowed his time served, which was 22 years, to be credited towards him, and he will most likely be up for release in 2031. And Rod got a new hearing. His was like moved around a lot because it happened right when the pandemic was going on, but it ended up taking place in November of 2020. And the judge listened to 3 days of testimony. Heather's sister came and like begged the judge to keep Rod in prison. And then the state attorney filed a 57-page document defending the original sentence, mentioning Rod's vampire clan, and said that his interest in the occult, it caused him to become violent. And Rod would make his own statement that claimed Heather told him that her father was sexually abusing her. And because of that and his own history, he felt like he had to do something. He said like, yeah, that he had to help. No, yeah. Anyways, Rod told the court, I know, this is a quote, I know nothing I can say or do will bring them back. And I hope you just know that how truly sorry I am. I cannot tell you how many nights over these decades that I have wished with all of my soul that I could take the night back, preventing this from happening. End quote. Now the judge, the sentencing judge, would ultimately upheld the life without parole sentence, and Rod over here will most likely never get out of prison. Which is I don't know. I guess that's a good thing. Kind of like last week where it's like another child. But this child made life choices, adult decisions, you know? And was a vampire and like drank blood and was kind of like, meh, weird. I don't know. I mean, he like brutally killed them. So I think Rod, sorry, but yeah. I don't know. You want to hope, or at least I do. I like to hope that people change, but also, I don't know. He killed a mom and a dad, and the poor Heather and her sister have no parents because of what? I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know, but he's going to be in prison for all of his life. Sorry, goodbye. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, people seem to love vampires, and there's always someone out there who takes the vampirism to the next level and gets very excited about it, gets very jazzed, and just becomes a vampire. And nothing good seems to come from that, does it? In 2003, legendary Shack Shakers wrote a song called Blood on the Bluegrass, which is about Rod and the whole gang. And then 2002, there was a movie called Vampire Clan, and it's also based off of this story. So that's good. Cool. Lots of movies, lots of books, you know. I don't know. People love vampires. People love vampires. They are interesting, because someone who claims to be a vampire, you're like, really? Okay, tell me more. Like, what's that about? Are you? Okay. Anyways, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Do you think he should remain in prison for the rest of his life? Well, if he's a vampire, that's a very long life, because he's going to live forever. Oh, that sucks. Bummer, bro. In my mind, this look went better than executed. But let me know. I'm supposed to be just like a goth girl. But I feel my costume is a goth girl. Is it cute? I don't know. In my mind, it looked cuter than this. Anyways, I would love to hear who you want me to talk about next week. But other than that, I love and appreciate you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. You make good choices. Please be safe out there. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye.
Wow. Yeah, no, but seriously, that case is messed up to its core. It's just full of deep childhood traumas. And I'm still not over the irony of being a vampire and getting a life sentence. Because he was already 500 years old. So, like, his life sentence was going to be quite long. Oh. Let me tell you, this next episode, this next case, this next little loser, irritating. This is why I don't want kids. Because what if you get one of these? Listen, this little spoiled brat, okay, sorry, but things seem to be going great. Had every opportunity at his fingertips. And it still wasn't enough. Never is, huh? These are so frustrating. This is the story of Alan Ruby.
I actually never heard of this story. Happened not that long ago. And I don't know. I'm always surprised. Every time I do a murder mystery, I'm like, really? It gets worse. It always does. So today's story is about like a shopaholic, spoiled teenager, pretty much, who was never told no. And that was like the only intro I could think of. Pretty much. So let me start doing makeup. I'm thinking I'm going to do blue today. Okay, great. So the Harubi family, that's who we're talking about. It was a family of 4. There was the father, his name was John. Mother, her name was Joy. But everyone called her Tinker. They had a son, he was the oldest son. His name was Alan. And then a daughter named Catherine. So John, who was 50 at the time of this story, he was a publisher of a local weekly newspaper. His family, like generations before him, had owned the Duncan Banner, which was a local paper. And it was like 3 generations in his family this paper was in. And then he ended up selling it in 1997. So when he sold the paper, it left the family like with a good chunk of change. You know, like they had a good amount of money and they were able to live pretty comfortably. Then in 2007, John bought 2 other local papers, the Marlow Review and then the Comanche County Chronicle. So again, local paper. It's what he knew. It was in the family. I think he liked it, right? So he kept it going. I got eyelash glue stuck all over my lashes. This is a side note. If you know a good makeup remover that gets like, I can't get the eyelash glue off. I have tried all of my makeup removers. It's so frustrating. So let me know down below. Thanks. Okay, back to this family. So still talking about John. So John owned these papers, doing very well. He was also the vice president of the foundation of the Oklahoma Press Association. He was also like an active Boy Scout leader and did lots of different charitable activities. Everyone who knew him considered him like very trustworthy, loyal, friendly, cheerful, just a good guy. Okay, here I go. I'm kind of nervous about this blue. So Joy, his wife, she was 48 at the time. She was a formal school teacher who wrote for the local paper, the Marlowe Review, the one that John owned. And on top of that, she was actually a licensed private investigator. I'm not sure if she was like working as a PI. I couldn't figure it, but it doesn't matter. Like, she was licensed. She could. So again, everyone called her Tinker, and they had nothing but like good things to say about her as well. That she was a devoted friend. She was committed to doing good for like the community and also her family. Yeah, they just sound like, you know, simple, quiet, nice people. So then they had their 2 kids. They had Alan and then Catherine. So Catherine was the younger daughter of the 2. She was 17 at the time when the story takes place. And she, at this time, was a junior at Duncan High School. And she was like on the volleyball team. And it was said she was like really good, really smart. She was a great friend, loyal, funny. She always had a smile on her face. Her family like wanted their kids to like go to college and be successful in life. And so she was on that path to go to college and, you know, go on to do whatever she was going to do. And then she had her older brother, Alan. And Alan and Catherine are kind of close in age. He was 18, 19 when this story takes place. She was 17, so close. And I guess growing up, the 2 of them were pretty close, like the siblings, you know. And then as they got older, they drifted apart. It's believed because of Alan's crappy behavior, which we're going to talk about in a second. You know, just trying to paint the picture here, okay? So the family, the 4 of them, they lived in Duncan, Oklahoma. I guess it's like is a pretty small area. It has like 20,000 to 25,000 people living there. But the family lived in like a very nice neighborhood. They lived on Bent Tree Street, which housed people with like money. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the neighborhood that you would go trick-or-treating at. That neighborhood. So it was said that, you know, everyone, not everyone, but like a lot of people in this neighborhood, they were familiar with the Harubi family. You know, they had like a large presence there. They were well known, and it was said they were extremely well liked. You couldn't not like them. They were just nice people. There was a neighbor who would like later give an interview, and this neighbor was like, oh, the Harubi family would always help you out. Like, if your car wouldn't start, they'd come out and like help you jump your car. If your dog ran off, they'd try and help you catch your dog, just like doing neighborly things. So they were a close family, well off, and everyone, for the most part, was like familiar with them. Now their son, Alan, he was not ideal. Okay. He was born December 13th, 1995. I'm thinking about that because he's a Sag, but he's a December Sag, and they're different. I can say that because I'm a Sag too. So not much is said. I don't know how he was raised or anything, but it was like once he hit his teenage years, that's when he became like a little shit. He was a troublemaker, to say the least. Well, I don't know actually, because I don't know what he was like when he was a kid, but it was like, you know, he hit those teenage years and like that, he's just like things went south. But it could have been going south for a long time. I don't know. Anyways, what we do know is that at the age of 13, Alan, like, he got caught stealing his grandmother's car. Yeah. I'm not sure what the outcome of this was, but, you know, he did that. Then, when he was 15, he was driving, and he got pulled over for speeding. And he told the officer, like, oh, I don't have my wallet or anything, you know, like, ugh. Alan, he gave the police officer a fake name and a fake birthday. Like, he made it up, right? I mean, luckily, the officer, Beep Bop Boobs, looks up the plate and all that stuff, and he was able to, like, find the correct information. And that backfired on Alan, stupid kid. But he ended up getting charged with, like, speeding, obstructing an officer, and for having no license/insurance. I was surprised he didn't get arrested. You know? Like, isn't that, like, a major crime? But I don't know. Again, not sure what happened afterwards. I'm sure he got a stern talking to, but unclear. The only positive thing I read about Alan was that in high school, he won the Best Actor award at like the Duncan Theater Summer Teen Workshop. So that was the one positive thing I read. He won that, so good for him. His peers, they felt about him based off of what I was reading. A lot of the people who knew him or whatever, they felt like he was a bit of a fibber, you know?
Like, everything out of his mouth was like, yeah, sure. Okay, you know? Like, Allen was ranked, well, he told people that he was the 5th ranked high school tennis player in the state. But it turns out, like, that wasn't true. His tennis coach would later say that, like, Allen actually wasn't even very good. Like, at all. But he told people otherwise, you know? Allen would also tell his friends that he was going to become a male model. And he was actually about to appear in W magazine that very December. He's like, yeah, everybody wants me. I'm like a hot shit male model. But again, that wasn't true. And like, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but like, if you look at a picture of him, male model, you know, whoopsie. Oops. But that's what he went with. Some of his peers would say that he came off like a bit stuck up, that he was just a big talker. And again, nobody really believed what he said. He's just always, everyone was beneath him. Okay. So there was some trouble, family trouble, that happened in 2012 when the police were called to the Harubi household because Allen, I guess he attacked his mom. Like, he's still a teenager. So I guess there was some kind of argument. Sources said, like, over money. I'm assuming here that he probably stole money, but whatever. What we do know is that there was an argument and Allen ended up attacking his mom. Like, he got so mad that he attacked his mom, Joy, and then he was choking her. So the police were called. I think the parents were trying to, like, spook him or something, but they didn't press charges. I get it, though. Like, it's your kid. I'm sure that's the last thing you want to do is, like, press charges. But they should have, you know? So charges weren't pressed, and like the story would honestly get buried because they owned all the newspapers and stuff. Yeah, so they kind of like swept that under the rug. But it just like showed that Allen had a temper and he wasn't afraid to attack. So after this, we're not sure like what the parents did. Like, they probably punished him, you would hope. I'm sure they did, but there, you know, there's no like reports as to what they did. But what we do know is that the parents, John and Joy, when Allen graduated high school, which was like not long after this attack, they bought him a brand new Jeep as a graduation present. Yeah. I don't know. If my kid tried to choke me, I would not be buying them a Jeep. Okay? I'll choke them right back. You know, but then again, I'm not a parent. I don't have kids, and I'm not in their shoes. So, but they bought him a Jeep, so I'm sure that really taught him a lesson. You know, but the car, it wasn't enough for Allen. He wanted more. So in 2013... Allen, he signed up for an American Express credit card, but he did so by using his grandmother's information, like her name and, you know, her social and all that, and he signed up for a credit card. Got approved. He's like, hell yeah. It was said that he would, like, go visit his grandma all the time. I guess she lived close by, but, like, yeah. So, Allen, he liked to spend money, okay? He liked to spend money, and he liked to show off his extravagant lifestyle on social media. Oh yes, he like loved social media. He was all over it. He used his grandma's, but like, you know, the American Express card. He used that card to book a 6-week trip to Rome, Naples, and Paris. 6 weeks. Okay. So during his trip, like, of course he was, you know, sharing pictures along the way, or at least posting pictures along the way. I mean, he's like, look, he got like expensive watches, wallets, cars. Like, he didn't get the cars, but you know when like people like post pictures like next to the car as if it's theirs? He's doing a lot of that. He was sharing a lot of these large purchases he was making on this trip. There was like one picture that Allen took. It was like of this $4,000 watch. And in the background, you can see like the twinkling lights from the Eiffel Tower. I can't. I hate those types of people on social media who just like try and flex about how much money they have. Like, it's so fucking loserish. It's so lame. Doesn't matter. Okay, look. So he posts that. He's like, oh, look at me. Oh, I'm living the life that you wish you had. And then like a few days later, when he was staying in Paris, he was staying at like this really nice, famous landmark hotel. It was like in the chic Left Bank district. I probably couldn't pronounce it. So it's just like a well-known hotel, okay? He, you know, he takes a photo and he posts it on social media and he puts the caption like, you know you're at a nice hotel when it's the same one the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills stayed there. Like, first of all, it doesn't make sense, but okay, All right. So many would say that Alan was like a shopaholic, but like even Alan himself said that he was. His Twitter, which is still up, so naturally, I spent forever going through all of his tweets. Research. Okay. Anyway, so he tweeted a lot. There was numerous tweets from himself where he's calling himself like a shopaholic. And there's also a ton of tweets that did not age well. Woo! But yeah, he loved to shop, and like also on his Twitter, he would always post about fast food and like wanting fast food. He's just like a dumb teenager. So there was even a blog post from Alan, which is now deleted, but this original blog post said, "There is no bigger rush than getting to the register at a store and swiping your credit card. And in that moment, you're waiting for the screen to say approved. You start to get heart palpitations and you get a rush of adrenaline. By the time she's handing your stuff to you, you are so high on adrenaline, the $15,000 total does not even faze you until you've gotten home and seen the receipts." All right. Okay. So I'm not sure like what he told his parents before going on this 6-week trip, right? Like he must have had some kind of good explanation at first, but doesn't matter because the fun won't last. It won't last long. So Alan's father, John, discovered the credit card fraud, and he ended up reporting it to police. It was said that he was furious and he wanted his son Alan to be prosecuted. One of John's friends at the time said that John was like just beside himself, that he could tell it was really wearing on him, and like he was enraged. So his father followed through, and Alan was officially charged in August of 2013 with racking up nearly $5,000 in fraudulent purchases on his grandmother's card. But law enforcement, they said like the real amount was closer to $80,000. Yeah, I believe that more, because like $5,000 for a 6-week trip, you know he charged way more than that. So then in January of 2014, Alan, he actually pled guilty to the charge of the credit card theft. So after this, he would be placed on like delayed sentencing, which is a form of probation for young offenders. So as part of the punishment, the court ordered him to pay restitution. He also had to attend drug and alcohol counseling and complete a cognitive behavior program, and then also undergo a substance abuse evaluation. I don't know, if you caught your kid doing this, like what would be the proper punishment? I'd be like, lock him up. Well, yeah, I think that's fair. I'd be like, no, he needs to go to jail, because obviously this little shit didn't learn anything, because like the next month, it was like February 2014, you know, Alan, his spending wouldn't be stopped. Right back at it. So he posted 2 photos of these expensive ass wallets, including like one of them had the initials monogrammed on them. So, you know, it was like extra money for that one. He posted this online of the 2 wallets. One of them had been chewed up by a puppy, so I had like bite marks all over it. And Alan captioned it, 2 wallets, 2 days. Like, wow. He has so much money. He went through 2 wallets in 2 days. Oh, get better goals, people. Okay? Get better goals. Right? Come on. This isn't a flex. So he posts this. No idea where he got that money from. And then a few months later, Alan started up a Facebook page that contained the following line: having observed surgeries at Duncan Regional Hospital during his high school years, his career plans include studying plastic surgery. I guess was his new lie. Well, maybe it wasn't a lie. Well, it's probably a lie, because Alan was telling people that, you know, he was studying to become a plastic surgeon. Okay, you know, all right. And then also on this Facebook page, it said that he was being represented by a public relations company and a modeling agency in Oklahoma City. Again. Okay. All right. Sure. All right. Okay. Modeling. All right. Okay. Well, Alan, he needed to keep up appearances, and he went back to what he knew: stealing from his grandmother. So this was the summer of 2014, and like Alan would visit his grandma, and I guess she would leave her checkbooks out, like, you know, because she's trusting or whatever, that her grandson isn't going to be a little shit. So she's leaving her checkbooks out, and he would just like steal checks from the checkbook. There were some sources that said his grandma had dementia, but then other sources said that she didn't. So I don't know if that was true or not, but either way, he was taking advantage of her. Okay, we can all agree on that. So between June 1st and July 15th, 2014, Alan stole some of his grandma's checks, and he used them to spend around $17,500 until the bank, grandma's bank, like had caught on and contacted her and told her that they believe she was a victim of forgery. They pulled like video surveillance that caught Alan cashing one of the checks. Oh yeah. So he was caught and he was about to get in trouble. I guess like nobody knew yet, or at least like there weren't any consequences happening yet. So Alan just like kept posting on his social media like normal, you know? There's this one photo from August 2014. It's of Alan. It was on his social media. It's like on his Twitter, I think still. But he's at the local WinStar casino and he's holding up a cash voucher. And the caption said like, I was the big winner. And like, but I think maybe it was sarcasm because like the cash voucher was for $41. But yeah, you know, okay. So once the summer is over, a few weeks go by, and Alan, he goes to college, and he's attending the University of Oklahoma, where he would be majoring in political science. So no plastic surgery, I guess. So the school was about 75 miles from his parents' home in Duncan. And when he got all moved in, he had tweeted about having lunch with his mom at a popular restaurant that was near the campus. The tweet said like, lunch at the Mont with Mummy. All moved in. According to the students at the University of Oklahoma, the people who like kind of like knew him or was around him, they said like Alan would often brag about how much money he had or like how much money his family had. Plus he was known to go on spending sprees. He would show up to class or like at a friend's house wearing a Rolex watch. He would have like Louis Vuitton shoes and would tell people if he traveled, he only flew first class. He was just annoying. On social media, anytime Alan would post something, you know, he's always showing off. He would use like hashtag expensive. Friends who knew him at the time, they referred to him as impulsive, spastic, and obsessed with money. And I think based off of everything we've heard, we can all agree on that. Sounds about right. So Alan has moved in, right? In October of 2014. He's driving his Jeep and he once again gets pulled over for like a traffic violation. And he does the same thing that he did when he was younger. He told the officer he didn't have his driver's license, and then he gave like a fake name and birth date. This time though, the officer like didn't look him up or anything. Just kind of like was like, all right, and like gave him a ticket, which is a shame. And I believe this is like when he's reaching his like the boiling point. Some sources said that like after Alan got caught stealing his grandma's checks, he went and he borrowed money from loan sharks and like payments were due, but he had no money. So he needed to fix this quick. Alan decides the only way to continue this lifestyle was to get rid of everyone. So that same night that he got his ticket, he actually drives out to his parents' place, you know? He knew that his dad, John, he carried, he had like a 9mm pistol in his pickup truck. So his dad was like at work or something, and Alan drives to his location, kind of like parks the Jeep so his dad doesn't see him. He finds his dad's truck, he gets into the truck, he takes the gun, and then he drives back to his college. Just hours later, John, you know, he goes out to his truck and he notices that the gun was gone. So he instantly went to the police and reported it stolen. So Alan, he steals the gun, he drives back to his college, he like waits a little bit, and then he drives back out to Duncan and waited down the block from his parents. So he's doing a lot of driving. So he kind of like parks down the street so no one would see him, and he's like waiting for his mom to get home. So once he sees his mom like, you know, pull into the house, whatever, he waits a little bit. Alan snuck around the house to get to the backyard so he can go through the back door. When he gets inside the house, he shot his mother in the head. When the first shot didn't kill her, he shot her a second time. Over what, you say? I know. Then, his poor younger sister, Catherine, she was in the front driveway and she was just like out there fucking washing her car. She heard something, so she comes into the house. And that's when she comes into the house, Alan shot her in the head, which killed her instantly. So then Alan said that he then waited in the house for about an hour for his dad to get home from work. Yeah, he was sitting in the house with the bodies of his mom and sister just like laying there, and he's sitting there for like an hour. What in the sick? I know, so gross. So Alan's just waiting there for his dad. So his dad does get home, and when he did, John walked into the house where Alan shot him and like watched his father fall and then shot him a second time. After killing his whole family, he staged the house to make it look like, he tried to stage the house to make it look like a robbery had happened. And then before leaving the house, he took the gun, the murder weapon, and then also the home surveillance equipment. Yeah, he took that with him. Now, some reports say that he tossed this stuff into a nearby lake. But then I was watching like the court footage, and I believe they said that Alan took the stuff and put it in the family's storage unit. But either way, what I'm trying to get at is that he was trying to rid the evidence. He tried. So then after doing all this, he drove back to college campus. He returned to his dorm. During the murders, Alan had left his phone in his dorm room so he wouldn't be tracked. Like he was, trying to think ahead, I guess. So when he got back to the dorm room and back to his phone, he sent out a few tweets. Some had photos of like the view from his dorm room. Like, wow, what a nice night. Look, to make it look like that he was in his dorm room having like a normal evening, just being a normal college kid, nothing to see here. Now, it may sound like it was late in the evening, but it was not. It was still early. I mean, I was like, oh, it must be like late at night because he was doing so much driving, but he wasn't. When Alan got back to his dorm, he posted all those tweets and whatnot. Then he drove out to Dallas with some friends where the Oklahoma University was playing its annual football game against the University of Texas. So it was like this, everyone was going. He didn't go to the game, but he booked a room at the Ritz-Carlton, Dallas. So he could like hang out with his friends and like party in the room, and they could have it all weekend. I guess it's like a big party scene. But he like literally just killed his family, and he went out and he's like partying. Alan even posted an Instagram photo of him and like some of his friends in the hotel room. He posted it like that Sunday as if nothing happened, no big deal. He also tweeted, college wouldn't be half as great without these two peaches. # best friends. # roommates. # college. One of his friends said that like nothing that he said or did raised any suspicion. Like every time he saw him on the weekend, he was happy, he was laughing, he was having a good time. And that like the two of them were up in the early morning of like Monday morning, just like joking and studying together. Like nothing literally happened. So around 9 a.m. Monday, October 13th, 2014, Duncan police, they receive a 911 phone call from a, distraught woman who turned out to be the Harubi family housekeeper, who had been working for the family for like almost 20 years at this point. She arrived to the house like normal. And that's when she found the dead bodies of John, Joy, and Catherine. And all of them had been shot dead. So at the crime scene, it was all 3 bodies. And then also around them were the 5 spent 9mm shell casings. Sadly, the bodies weren't discovered for like almost 4 days. But people were starting to get worried when John didn't show up for work Friday morning. And also, according to employees, he also failed to cover the weekly high school football game. And like John always attended the football game. So it was just like, it was weird.
So when the police get out there and, you know, they see the crime and all that stuff, the Duncan police, they inform Alan about his family. And it was said that he was like crying and like he was very upset. But some people like kind of felt like it was funky, you know? It was acting a little bit, but so Ellen went down to the police station with them and, you know, they're telling him about like the early stages of their investigation. The police chief noted that Alan was distressed and very upset, and that he even like spent a long time with a chaplain confessing his sins. Because Alan was suspected in a pending stolen check complaint, police held him for the night for further questioning. On top of that, Alan had also violated his probation for the credit card fraud offenses by traveling out of state to Dallas. So they're like, we're holding you here for that. They knew something was up. Okay, they just didn't know what, but they knew something was up. So police are questioning Alan, asking him like where he was, you know, like when was the last time he saw his family? And initially Alan had told the investigators that he hadn't been home like for days by this point. But again, they knew something was up. So the next day, investigators, they used a search warrant to get all of Alan's toll records from the recent months. Ooh, pretty smart. The toll records, they showed that Alan had used the turnpike to travel from his college town of Norman to his hometown of Duncan twice on the day of the murders. Police in Norman also found 4 more stolen checks under Alan's dorm bed, along with like a notebook with handwritten notes that was mainly like him practicing signatures, I guess. So that evening, while still in police custody, Alan would eventually crack, and he confessed to killing his family. They were pushing him. There's like a little clip you could watch on YouTube. It's only like 30 seconds, but they're like pushing him, and you could see he's just like, okay, I did it. Like, he couldn't take it anymore, you know? From the description of the officers, there was like no emotion when he was retelling what he had done. So Alan was arrested, and then investigators announced to the public that he had been charged with concealing stolen property in relation to the stolen credit card. But then, like, not long after, they had announced that Alan was the sole suspect in the murders of his family. So prosecutors alleged that Alan staged the crime scene to make it look like the killing was the act of a robber, you know? And then 3 days after his arrest, the district attorney told the media, quote, "I think the only remorse he has shown is that he got caught. It's remorse because he knows his life is basically over. He's either going to be incarcerated for the rest of his life or he'll be on death row." End quote. So the district attorney also told the media about the previous incident at Alan's home where he had assaulted his mother, Joy, remember, over money. He was referring to that incident where he tried to choke his mom. And the district attorney called Alan, who, mind you, I forgot to mention, he was 19 at this time. Sorry about that. But he referred to Alan as an evil kid, which I was like, yeah, I'm sure we can all agree. We can all agree on that. Yeah. So the district attorney general said that Alan killed his parents to inherit the family's estate, and he killed his sister so he would be like the sole heir. Alan had also confessed to owing $3,000 to a loan shark in Norman, and he felt that the murders would generate an inheritance to pay off his debt. Over $3,000. Wow. So Duncan police detective, his name was John Byers, he reported that Alan admitted to killing his family because he had been cut off financially due to an abundance of spending in the recent times. At first, Alan was going to plead not guilty, which is like, really, dude? But it didn't last long. He ended up changing it to guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder after the prosecutors dropped their request for the death penalty. So the deal was made at the request of the surviving Harubi family members. They didn't want to go to trial. They did not want this to go to trial. They didn't want to sit through the trial or anything, and they had said that they had been through enough. So without a trial, there would be no death penalty, which personally, I think that's better, right? Like, why give him the death penalty and give him an easy way out? Let him sit in there and just, you know, have just for the rest of his life like that.
I think is worse than the death penalty. In June 2015, Allen and a journalist from the local paper called the Oklahoman, they were in contact with one another. And the journalist asked Allen, like, why? And he also asked Allen if the tears that he was shedding in the courtroom, like, was that real? Why were you crying? Was it all for a show or something like that? Just anything and everything. Surprisingly, Allen wrote back saying, quote, I 100% welcome the death penalty. What occurred is so horrible, is deserved. It is so unspeakable. This has been the hardest thing I have ever done. Which, side note, I was like, this is the hardest thing you've ever done? You killed your own family. Like, what? Like, that part, I was like, I got hung up on that sentence for a little too long. This is the hardest thing you've ever done? He went on to say that the tears have all been real. I lost my entire family at once. How could they not be real? Then he went on to say, not taking a shot at you. It's just hard to hear that somehow I'm faking all this. Then he added, this didn't happen because of shopping. My shopping wasn't something I or my parents could not pay. They just thought my spending was out of control, and it was. End quote. Okay, like then what was it, Allen? You know? Okay, like, okay, I don't know. Anyways, Allen's letter also said that he didn't feel like himself that day and that he's still trying to work out why he took this inconceivable action. Not once did he ever say, like, sorry, I'm sorry I did this. Sorry. He never said sorry. Not once. During sentencing in 2016, family members had showed up to give some statements. His grandpa was there and, like, looked right at Allen and said, like, my only comment to the boy is, may God have mercy on your soul, period. Then John Harubi's sister, her name was Allison, she wasn't present in the courtroom, but she had requested that during sentencing, her letter be read out loud. This is what it said. I have known the killer since he was born and spent many holidays and vacation time as family over the years. The killer was part of our family, but no more. He has destroyed that family by the evil and insidious acts. If there were ever a definition of evil, it would be the killer who took our family. I want him never to hurt another soul or to ever see him again. End quote. It seems like there's not enough words to, like, tell someone, like, fuck you, you know? Like, God, I'd want to punch him in the face so bad. There's no word. Yeah, you get it. Like, what do you even say? Allen, he was like able to speak, but he was barely audible during his statement. He was just shaking and crying as he told his family members that were there how he killed his parents and sister. But again, like, not once did he ever give any type of apology. Not once. Fucked up. So the district attorney said that he firmly believed Allen was deserving of a death sentence, but that he would honor the family's position and, like, not wanting to sit through a trial. And then he also asked the public, like, to respect the family's decision. So under the plea agreement, Allen was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. He, in turn, agreed not to appeal, not to contact his relatives, not to profit from his crimes, like through book or movie deals, and to not communicate with the media. The DA said that he's going to prison and no one is going to hear from him again. After this, Allen was transferred to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections in McAlester, where he is currently serving his life sentence and will be there probably forever. He's like nothing more than a butt buddy, really. And that's going to be the rest of his life. All for what, huh? Stupid. So I was reading, like, where is he now, you know? And right now there's still some ongoing stuff because he did become the sole beneficiary for his father's estate. Yeah, so that includes, like, his trust, money, all that bullshit. So they're trying to, like, figure this out and how to terminate this so he doesn't get the money. But, like, there's, you know, it's a whole legal mess, really. So hopefully he doesn't get it, but, like, by his 35th birthday or something, if nothing, like, changes, then he would get the whole estate. Just a mess. And that, my friends, is the case of Allen Harubi. He killed his whole family for what? For what? Oh, it's so awful. Luckily, he's going to be locked up forever, but, like, you know, that doesn't bring anyone back. Oh, So sad. The fact that he just killed everyone, his sister. It's just such a sad story. I went deep, dude. Because you could find his Twitter and like all of his tweets and stuff. Everything else has been deleted and removed. But if you have like extra time and you got nothing else to do, find his Twitter. He's a little shit. Let me know what you guys think down below. I don't know what are you gonna say? What are you gonna tell me? I don't know. Like what? I'm sure the parents thought they were doing everything that they could. You know. Yeah. Let me know what you think down below. My makeup came out cute. That's, I don't know, something to end on there. I was like, no, I shouldn't do blue. I was a little worried because I haven't done blue in a while, but no regrets. No regrets. I like it. Yeah. All right, let me know who you want me to talk about next time. Make good choices. Don't be a little shit out there, okay? Fucking, come on, okay? Okay. Have a good day. Make good choices. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye. Wow. You see what I mean? In my personal opinion, Alan was just a spoiled brat. And he had maybe he has remorse for what he did now. But at the time, it didn't seem that way. I couldn't get over the fact that he was like, I'm a model. And I was like, are you? Are you though? Listen, now he's going to sit his little model butt in prison. So, for what? You know, those stories are so frustrating. It's like, for what? For what? Well, I got another one for you, okay? This next episode is another case where family life appeared to be fine, but something much darker was brewing below the surface, as it always is, huh? Now, this teen, she technically wasn't even a teenager yet. She was only like 12 years old, so she's like a preteen, probably shopping still at like Limited Too, but she fell in love with a 300-year-old werewolf. Yes. Now, in the first episode of this compilation right now, I mentioned this story. So I figured, hey, let's add it in. Let's watch it. I don't know why I'm getting all hyped about it. This is the story of Jasmine Richardson. I think I'm blonde in that video. Should I go blonde again? I was thinking about going blonde again. Look at, I'm bored. I want to go blonde. I did have more fun.
So today I wanted to have a little chat about the Richardson family, and this story is based out of Medicine Hat, Canada. If you watched last week's episode, I got really hung up on the city names, Elephant Butte and Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And I was just like, dude, these names, okay? And then a lot of you guys explained to me where these names came from. Very interesting. Thank you for that. And then this week, Medicine Hat. I was stuck on it. These city names, man, they're just getting to me. So Medicine Hat, Canada. Let me tell you about it. It's like a little suburb area. A lot of middle-class family lives there. Quiet. So the Richardson family was made up of Mark was the father, Deborah was the mother, and then there were two children, Jasmine and Jacob. Jasmine was 12 years old when this story takes place, and Jacob was 8 years old. Jasmine was attending, I think it was an all-girls Catholic school. She was known to be a good kid. What can you say about a 12-year-old? You know, they're always good until they hit their teenage years. Am I right? But Jasmine was nice. She was a good kid, did well in school. And Jacob, the 8-year-old, like family friends would say that he was a class clown. He was goofy, just like a typical 8-year-old, you know? The Richardson family, they were pretty tight-knit and they were just a very close, loving family. So Jasmine was 12, right? And she was approaching her teenage years. And her parents noticed that she started to change, as most do when they hit their teenage years or pre-teen years. So when they started to notice just a change in Jasmine's attitude, they didn't really think much of it. With Jasmine, okay, so she had some friends at her Catholic school, right? And she was like a rule follower, and she just, I don't want to call her a goody two-shoes because like I feel like that's not the right word. She just followed the rules and was a good kid, right? She liked to wear pink or like color and like quote unquote girly things. When she was 12, her parents started to notice a change in her attitude, but then they also noticed a change in her appearance. And it kind of started a little slow, right? So at first it was just like Jasmine really liked wearing color and pink, and now all of a sudden she seemed to be more interested in darker makeup, the first red flag. Then she started to just mainly want to wear darker clothes, all black. And then Jasmine was more interested in punk rock, the devil's music. So Jasmine and her friends at school, they started to like go their own ways a little bit. They noticed that Jasmine, her interests were changing and she was becoming a little bit of a rebel. Jasmine was showing up to school in all black clothing, fishnets, choker. We got chains, the dark gothic makeup, and jewelry that wasn't allowed at the school. So she started to draw like fake tattoos on her hands and stuff with like a Sharpie marker, but it was like devil stuff. And she's at a Catholic school. So she would get pulled into the office. She would get in trouble. And school officials kind of found themselves really on Jasmine's behind because she wasn't obeying dress code. She was writing stuff all over her body that was like satanic. And Jasmine just started to get in trouble more and more. And it wasn't even because of her schoolwork. She was still doing well in school. It was just that she wasn't following the dress code and she started to have a little sass. The school teachers at the Catholic school, they thought, it was odd because they knew Jasmine as the goody girl, and now she was challenging teachers, giving pushback, snarky remarks. She was just being sassy. So one evening, Jasmine attended a punk rock show. I don't know which one. I tried to find it. I'm a curious cat. I've said this before. Meow. I just wanted to know. Couldn't find it. I don't know if she went with friends or anything, but the only information I could find was that she attended a punk rock show. So while she was there, she met this guy and she sees him at the show. She's like, oh my god, he is so fine. And his name is Jeremy. So Jeremy like showed some interest in Jasmine. He was talking to her. He was making her feel cute, making her feel special. And guess how old Jeremy was? 23. He was 23 at this time, talking to a 12-year-old. I don't know about you, but I think that's a problem. Jeremy, a little bit about him, he was unemployed. He was a high school dropout. He lived in a not so great neighborhood. What Jasmine really found like appealing about him was, well, first of all, this older man is just like showing interest in her, but also he was just full-blown goth kid. He wore, all black. He had eyeliner. It was all smudged and just like, and she just thought, ooh, bad boy. Which, side note, I feel like this needs to be talked about just in general. Because I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, but when I was in high school, I remember high school students, like my fellow classmates, they would be talking about how they were dating like an 18-year-old. I remember one girl was dating a 20-year-old. And at the time, a lot of us were like, oh my god, she's so cool. She's dating like an older man. Wow, oh my gosh. And now looking back, I'm like, if you are in high school, you do not need to be dating older men. And if older men are dating young high schoolers, like that's gross. And I never really thought about that until recently. And I was like, wait a minute. It's not cool to date an older guy. Well, I'm dating an older guy. But like when you're a kid, it's not cool. So just don't. Okay, that's my one piece of advice. Just don't do it. Anyways, I'm getting off track. Okay, so at this show, Jasmine gives Jeremy, her new friend, her phone number. And the two start hanging out secretly. Jasmine would tell her parents that she was like going to her friend's house or something to study. She was going out. She was sneaking out to go see this Jeremy guy. But when they couldn't hang out, they would stay in touch by messaging each other like on chat website. They also had MySpace, other social media sites. This was 2006. My apologies. Back to Jeremy, the guy she met. He would wear a vial of blood around his neck. Like it was a necklace, right? And it had a little vial. And he said that there was blood in there. And he would brag all the time to Jasmine that he loved the taste of blood and he needed it to survive. And she's like, why is that? Why do you need it to survive? Oh my god, are you a vampire? No, he's not a vampire, but guess what he is? So Jeremy tells Jasmine, this part made me laugh cry, and I'm sorry for laugh crying, but it was hilarious to me. So Jeremy tells Jasmine that he's a 300-year-old werewolf. And when Jasmine heard this, she was like, wow, 300-year-old werewolf who drinks blood? Sign me up. I feel bad for this Jeremy guy because he's 23 and he just kind of seems very lost in the world. But again, Jasmine is 12 years old. When you are a teenager or have that adolescent brain, that is the dumbest brain you will ever have in your whole life. You have no common sense. Jasmine and Jeremy, they were sexually active as well. So she kind of started to just act different too. A couple months after meeting Jeremy, that's when Jasmine becomes full-blown gothic. She was in it deep now. She was committed. A lot of Jasmine's older friends would say that they became afraid of her. They were scared of her. Dressing scary, she would draw like little crosses and stuff on her forehead. They said that she was just, quote, weird. That's what they said. I'm not saying weird. Jasmine said that she liked the idea of scaring people because it made her feel powerful and like in charge. And Jeremy just became the center of her world. She was infatuated. So Jasmine, she would spend a lot of her time on like MySpace. She was on this website called vampirefreaks.com, but it's pretty similar to MySpace, social media platform where you have friends, you can talk to people, you can leave comments, pictures, all that jazz, but I guess mainly targeted towards the vampires of the world, I think. Doesn't matter. On Jasmine's MySpace profile, her heroes used to be her mom and her dad and like God, and now she had changed her hero section to Marilyn Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer. Another red flag for the parents, like, ooh, on vampirefreaks.com, on her like about me or where you describe yourself, she described herself as bisexual, a Wiccan, and it's like this big fat long list of stuff, but like let's pick and choose. Wiccan, awkward, loud, a deep thinker, and insane. She listed her interests as unnatural hair colors, dark poetry, blood, and kinky shit. Jeremy was so like heavily on that website. That was like his main go-to website. And that's where they would communicate most of the time. So Jeremy's profile, his about me section, also very long. He said that he liked skateboarding, mosh pits, loud music, tattoos, kinky fetishes, Chris Angel. Who likes Chris Angel? That would be my red flag. Not the point, Bailey. So Jasmine kept the relationship hidden. You can't let your family know that you're dating a 23-year-old werewolf. And then finally, Jasmine's parents, they like go look at her social media and they see like that she loves somebody and they kind of connect the dots. They find out that she sneaking out or just like not coming home. That just pissed them off. Her parents they finally had to do something. She was being disrespectful. She was acting more rebellious. Jasmine wasn't respecting their household, their rules. They told Jasmine, you have to stop seeing this guy. Like, you can't be seeing him. He's way older than you. They told her that she's no longer allowed to see Jeremy, not allowed to leave the house unless she's going to school. No ifs, ands, or buts. And of course, this just caused Jasmine to lose it completely. And she just acted out even more. She rebelled even more. And basically that started a war in the house. So Jeremy and Jasmine, they would still communicate online. And that was now the main way that they talked. And Jasmine would be the one who proposed that Jeremy maybe gets rid of the problem. She wrote to Jeremy, which later they were able to pull these records, but she wrote to Jeremy, quote, I have this plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you. Very suspicious. And then Jeremy would go on to write, quote, their throats I want to slit. They will regret the shit they have done. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be my payment. End quote. And Jeremy wrote this in response. And she would constantly express to Jeremy how much she hated her family. She just wanted them gone because they were the reason why they couldn't be together. So then on the evening of April 23rd, 2006, it's nighttime, okay? It's quiet suburban street. Everybody's in bed, or at least getting ready for bed. But Deborah, the mom, she heard some noises downstairs. She puts on her robe and she goes downstairs to investigate. Goes to turn on the light. She was met with a man wearing a mask, holding a knife. So naturally, she starts screaming. She ends up getting attacked by this intruder. And Deborah, poor Deborah, she was stabbed 12 times over and over and over again. And she's just screaming the whole time. Because she's screaming, she woke up everybody in the house. Her husband, Mark, or Jasmine's dad, comes downstairs to see what's going on. That's where he sees this man over his wife just going at it, like stabbing her, and just blood everywhere. Oh my gosh. I couldn't even imagine like seeing, especially the one you love, your partner, being attacked. So Mark reacts and he grabs a tool that was close by. I think it was a screwdriver or something. He like grabs it and he's trying to like fight this guy that's on top of his wife. And he's trying anything he can. He's punching him. He's trying to stab him. And he's sadly though, he doesn't win the fight. He ended up being stabbed a total of 24 times, which resulted in Mark's death. Jasmine was like upstairs in her room or something pretending to sleep. So upstairs next to Jasmine's room is her younger brother's room. So the little boy, he's 8 and he woke up because of all the ruckus. He's scared, so he's like hiding in his room on his bed. And so then Jasmine comes running into the room. So then she's putting her hands over her brother's ears and just like protecting him from the loud screaming that's happening. And it's so stupid because then Jasmine's boyfriend comes upstairs after he just killed the both parents, right? He comes upstairs. Instead of Jasmine just saying like, hey, maybe, we don't kill my brother. Let's not do it. He's a little kid. He's only 8. No. Jasmine instead is the one who decided Jacob, her 8-year-old brother, he had to go. Just completely heartless. So her reasoning for having to get rid of her younger brother was because both of his parents were dead now. So what was the point? He wouldn't have anybody. And she was ready to start her new life with Jeremy. So this poor 8-year-old little boy, Jasmine, is the one who ends up stabbing her brother 5 times. And then on top of that, just to make sure that he is indeed dead, she slits his throat. Like, what the hell? How do you do that? I was reading this and I was just like, dude, I hate them. I hate them. Okay, so that same evening when the murders took place, a 6-year-old little boy, he was a neighbor. He came over to the Richardsons' house because he wanted to ask Jacob if he wanted to come outside and play with him. So he's knocking on the door. Hello. He's waiting. So he kind of like peeks through the window by the front door. When this little boy peeks through the window, he sees some shit. So this poor little boy, traumatized forever, he sees just blood everywhere and then body on the floor. So he went running home just screaming, and he tells his parents, I think they go over to the house to look, and then the police are called. So the police come over to the home. When they walk into the house, the police see just a nightmare. I guess that there was just blood everywhere. Okay, just everywhere. What a hard job, huh? You kind of forget. They gotta see some really fucked up shit. Bailey, stop cussing. The investigators in the house searching everything. So they had no idea what happened, right? They're thinking, what is this? Like domestic abuse? A burglary gone wrong? So when they go into Jacob's room and they see like his throat is cut, investigators are like, okay, this is somebody who had to know the family. Like, this is personal. So one of the officers inside of the home, he notices a family portrait that was like hanging on the wall. And he sees, okay, we have the mom, the dad, the brother, and then the daughter. Police think that the 12-year-old daughter had been kidnapped by the killer. So they put out an Amber Alert, hoping that somebody will find the missing daughter. Just hours after the murders, police go down to the school of Jasmine to search her school locker. And they're hoping to find any types of clues, looking for signs, anything. So they're going through Jasmine's locker. Right away, they find a drawing that gives everybody the creeps. But it's like stick drawings, very creative, but it's like a drawing of a house with stick figures inside the home, and then the home's on fire, and it looks like the stick figures were on fire as well. Then there are like 2 stick figures running away from the home that's on fire next to a car, and above it says mwahahaha, like they had gotten away from the fire or maybe set the fire. Just looking at all sorts of stick figure evil. So once they found that drawing, investigators looked at the missing girl Jasmine from a missing person to now a murder suspect. I mean, this drawing was super suspicious. They're like, why is this girl drawing this evil thing? What looks to be 2 stick figures that represent her and somebody else setting this house on fire, which resembles or looks like or could be her family home. They got to put the pieces together. Police investigators go looking for Jasmine, and it doesn't even take them that long to find her. Now, I couldn't exactly find how they found her, like how did somebody tip them off or what happened, but they ended up finding both Jasmine and Jeremy within the first 24 hours. And they were about 100 miles away in the town called Leader, and they were placed under arrest. Now, when they were being arrested, police, they said they didn't display any grief or sadness. They didn't seem concerned at all. And Jeremy, he bragged about his eye because he had like a black eye. Jeremy said that Mark, Jasmine's father, the father had punched him in the face, and he was kind of like laughing about it. So first with Jasmine and her trial began in June of the following year. So at her trial, Jasmine was asked why she murdered her parents and her little brother. And Jasmine said, quote, "I loved Jeremy so much. I thought it was going to bring us closer together," end quote. So then evidence was brought in, and this evidence was a stack of jailhouse letters exchanged between Jasmine and Jeremy after their arrest. So when they were in prison, they were writing one another. There were tons of letters. And in one of those letters, Jasmine joked that they were legends and immortal. Neither Jasmine or Jeremy mentioned any guilt or remorse for what they did. It was more of them just planning their future together as if they were going to get out of prison tomorrow. I keep having to remind myself over and over again, like, that she's only 12 at this time. So she just has no idea, like, she killed her family and she's in prison. And in another letter from Jasmine, they brought forward as evidence, it said, quote, "Never has a person affected me so much. Always will there be something missing without you with me. My lawyer tells me we're legends. Ha, closer to immortality, it would seem." So then they bring in another letter from Jeremy, and it says, quote, "I love you more than life itself. I've added you to my visitors list, so once you're released, please visit often. Never forget how much I care or that I love you. Without you, this life isn't worth living. You said you want to get engaged, question mark? Then here's a question. Will you marry me? If so, then it's a verbal agreement." So pretty much he was asking her to marry him. Sounds great. Okay. And then in her response letter, she said, yes, this is quotes, yes, I will. I would love to. And then she said, "The world really is against us." Roar, end quote. Roar? Roar? Side note, because I remember the MySpace kids using that word. Roar? Roar. I never understood it. It was always the scene kids. Roar. I'm gonna Google it. Hold on.
Roar. That means I love you in dinosaur.
Anyways, I saw all the scene kids always using that word. I never got it. No, can't relate. Anyways, she said that to him in a letter, so whatever. So again, in these letters, they never mention any guilt or remorse over the crimes, instead focusing on their relationship and how being in prison seemed to be a temporary setback. Jasmine took the stand in her own defense on July 3rd, 2007. During her testimony, she told the court that she had a hypothetical conversation about killing her family and possibly making the deaths look like a murder, suicide, or an accident, but never intended on actually going through with it. And then when questioned about the letters to Jeremy, she said she was referring to her 5 minutes of fame, that people are gonna remember them forever. I mean, they seem to like the idea of that. Jasmine said she was home when the murders took place, that she was upstairs in her brother's room trying to cover his ears so he wouldn't hear their parents screaming. She then said that Jeremy came upstairs into the brother's room and yelled at her to kill her brother, and that she had to do it because he just killed her parents for them, so she needed to participate. Jasmine would go on to say that she stabbed him, but, quote, "not very hard." She pled not guilty to all 3 counts of first-degree murder, but after just 3 hours of deliberation, on July 10th, 2007, the jury found her guilty on all 3 counts. She was sentenced, get this, wait, let me do my lip liner, because this is serious. Canada is for the people. She was sentenced to only 10 years of imprisonment, the maximum sentence allowed by the Youth Criminal Justice Act, which states that convicts who are under the age of 14 at the time they committed the act cannot be charged as an adult and can only be given a maximum sentence of 10 years. When I first heard this, I was like, what? So she got a credit for 18 months for the time that she had already served while waiting for her trial. And then 4 of those years out of the 10 years, those were going to be spent in a psychiatric facility. She would do 4.5 years under conditional supervision in the community. So a lot of people were outraged. I should put on lipstick because I probably look crazy, huh? A lot of people are outraged. The Canadian law is set up to rehabilitate people, to help them and to not necessarily punish them. I mean, obviously, if you don't know this, I don't live there. So I'm sure there are a lot of arguments about this and how it all works. But based from like me and somebody on the outside looking in, kind of sounds nice. Before you start yelling at me, put those fingers down. When you think about how we work here in the US, they don't care about actually helping and like fixing people or treating people for a mental illness or setting them up for like success beyond prison. Pretty much out here in the US, it's like they just lock you up and they throw away the key. They treat you like shit. I don't know. I just thought like, oh, at least they're trying to kind of like give her a chance, but it should be case by case, you know, like with her case, I don't know, man. Moving on. So Jeremy, the boyfriend who killed the mom and dad, his trial was in December of 2008. He was just straight up found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences in prison. He will be up for parole after serving 25 years. I was about to say, well, it's kind of not fair that she only got 10 years, but I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one. Like, they both did a very, very awful thing. Anyways, so in 2012, Jeremy, he changed his name to Jackson May, and he tried to appeal his case, but he failed, which is so strange to me. Like, I didn't even know you could change your name in prison. I'm just learning all sorts of new things. Oh, guess what, though? So in 2015, Jasmine, she completed her sentence and was fully released at the age of 23. She's been keeping a very low profile since her release. If she can go 5 years without any legal altercations, her juvenile record will be expunged, aka erased, like it never existed. So Jasmine, she got the crown of Canada's youngest convicted murderer at age 12. Congratulations, Jasmine. Yeah, that's inappropriate, but like what? She's 12. What the fuck? So it's pretty uncertain though. There's no like clear reports indicating that Jasmine and Jeremy are still a couple, that they got married. Nobody really knows. I doubt it, but who knows? So then there's another side. People standing up for Jeremy. There are a lot of people behind Jeremy saying he shouldn't have received such a harsh sentence compared to Jasmine. He came from a very abusive upbringing, and it's also said that Jeremy has severe FAS, what would be considered distinct facial characteristics popular amongst fetal alcohol syndrome sufferers. Part of this condition is severely impaired judgment, meaning that Jeremy didn't have the full mental capacity to fully understand what he was doing and just followed along with what Jasmine told him or suggested he did. And that Jasmine is the one who manipulated him into killing her family. I don't know, because I don't want to say like he should be released, because at the end of the day, he didn't like just stab him 1 or 2 times. He went for it. Kind of scary. I don't know. This is your fight, Canada, not mine. We have pretty bad people here, whatever. And that is the story about the Richardson family. Rest in peace to Mark, Deborah, and Jacob. You know, their lives were taken for no goddamn reason. And on that note, they should remain in prison, because I just feel bad that Jeremy's still in prison while Jasmine just was like, okay, thanks, bye. And then got to go on to college. I guess she got a scholarship when she was in prison. She got a scholarship to go to college. Let me know your thoughts about this case down below. Do you think Jasmine should be out? I mean, I was trying to find like an update, a where is she now? I found like a YouTube video, and some people think it's her as an adult, but you can't really tell. Plus, I'm sure she doesn't even want to be associated with what she did. I will say this though, when I was reading about this case and like trying to get all the info, all that good stuff, the one thing I could not find, and I looked high, I looked low, I still could have missed it because I'm not perfect, and the one thing I could not find was an apology. Not once did I see or read something where like Jasmine maybe cried and said, I'm so sorry. I understand what I did. And maybe she did in private. She doesn't have to do it publicly. But if you have such a public murder trial and stuff, you think you would do it just to get forgiveness from your community, right? Again, she could have apologized and I just missed it. Maybe she changed her name too and she just didn't announce it like Jeremy. I think if there's anything to take away from this case, I don't know, because Jasmine's family, they seem like to do everything kind of right. I don't know what they could have done differently besides like lock her up. And this is why I don't want kids, because they are the devil. They're already hard to raise. Now you gotta be all worried that they're gonna murder you? Like, come on, when do you get a break? Oh, I know, parents. Make sure to be checking on what your kids are doing. Check their phones. Check in with them on social media. Make sure they're not talking to any werewolves and stuff like that, okay? Okay. Tell them I sent you if they are asking you why. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Make good choices. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye.
Listen, it's been about it's over 6 years since I dropped that episode. Crazy to think about. What? Yeah. Okay. But I did a quick little search to see if there was anything out there about her. But nope, nothing. It seems that her record actually has been expunged and she probably has a new identity altogether, honestly. She's peace out. Teenagers, huh? Wow. Ugh. Good luck. Young enough to have wild imaginations. Unfortunately, sometimes old enough to make very deadly decisions and not really think things through. They scare me. They really do. Okay. Anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today and bearing with me. I will have a new video for you soon. But for now, I hope you have a good day. You make good choices and you stay safe out there. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye.